Hey, you've made it to Spry Space, where people managing social media accounts come for community. This year, our focus is social media for good. Together, we can work to make social media a landscape for healthy online communities to grow. Sound good? Then come along with us on the Spry Space podcast, where we share what we know, learn what we don't, and strive to make social media better for us all. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spry Space podcast. I'm Lacey, and today I have the fabulous Seth and the wonderful Adrian here today. Hi, how you doing?
Hello.
Good. Are you doing good, Adrian? How good?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right.
I've been answering like this lately. Middle. With no explanation. Just middle.
Yeah. Being in the PNW, the Pacific Northwest, it is really hard coming through a dreary, dark, wet winter. And then you get the fake spring. You get spring for a week in March, and it's all sunny and beautiful. And you're like, oh my gosh. I felt my, like a 30% of my sadness just go away with the sunshine.
With the sunshine, that's it.
And then, so it's been sunny, and then today it's back to rain, and it was just like...
It's true. Makes it worse. Okay, well, let's start out with some joy for you, Adrian, okay? So, Seth, you haven't been on in a while, so I want to ask you, is there a piece of social media content this week that you ingested that brought you joy?
Most definitely. So there's always social media that brings me joy. I actually haven't spent a whole lot of time on social media. I've just kind of been taking a break just because I felt I needed one. But I did come across a TikTok this last week that just made me laugh and share. And it was, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Notebook, but it was a stitch off of the scene of that where they're like out on the lake in the boat and they're rowing and then it starts raining and everything. But it was 2021 version, and it was a guy and a girl in a bathtub, and the guy's got like an oar hanging out of the bathtub and it looks like he's rowing. And then the lady like partway through turns on the shower. And
like it's
so
raining?
everything's like, so everything's like seamless with the actual scene, but it was, I don't know. To me, it tickled me the right way, and it just made me happy. So,
oh, I love that. How fun.
Yeah.
You'll have to do that with Sarah soon, okay? Send that our way.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, so our main topic today that I want to focus on is basically what's wrong with social media, okay? So everybody who's listening likely knows, if you've listened to our content before, that our main focus is social media for good. And as Adrian and I were kind of discussing this over the last week or so, we kind of had to kind of shake ourselves for a second and remind ourselves, like, yes, social media for good. It's important for us to focus on the good that's already happening and what people are doing to bring more good into the world through social media. But let's be real, it's not all love and light, positive vibes only, right? Like it can't be, or else we're totally not focused on what's happening underneath that makes us have to focus on social media for good in the first place. So y'all ready to talk a little bit about what's wrong with social media?
Let's do it.
Oh yeah, I love this.
Adrian loves a good rant, so here we go. So I put out this question on Facebook on my personal profile and then in our Spry Space community on Facebook, and we got a lot of answers back. Surprise, surprise. So
that should tell you something, Lacey, that I noticed that the most interaction you've gotten from people in our group is when you ask them what's wrong.
Maybe I worded the question just right for engagement, right? I know people like to talk about what's wrong with things. So if you just ask somebody to tell you what's wrong with something, they're going to answer really, really well. So,
yeah.
So one of the things that came up the most, it came from Patrick Kerwin, it came from Marcin, it came from Mike, is misinformation. Right? I mean, this was the most common answer people were giving was misinformation. So, Adrian, would you agree that overall misinformation is one of the biggest things wrong with social media right now?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yes. I mean, misinformation for a century. I mean, since humans the existence of humans, there's been misinformation, that there's been rumor, there's been, stories being told. There's been, I'm not up on my Shakespearean dramas, but I'm sure there is some sort of Shakespearean, play from back in the day where somebody started a misinformation campaign and then somebody died from it. I'm sure there is. So it's like kind of like a human nature to spread misinformation. But since we have this massive platform that's Facebook, now I think I wrote somewhere that it's like being in high school with 1 billion people.
Yes, I think that's such a good metaphor. You don't know what to believe in high school. You don't know who's telling the truth. And now there's 1 billion people that you don't know what to believe and who's telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Seth? Have you kind of had any experience with this in your daily life or over the past year where you've had to kind of come face to face with that misinformation with yourself, your friends, your family?
Oh, yeah. I think, anyone, especially on Facebook, I don't know why, but Facebook seems to be the big one for misinformation.
It's all about the algorithms, man.
If people like it, it gets spread. And honestly, so obviously anyone on Facebook has seen misinformation. The problem that I see the most with misinformation is the clash that it has with, I don't want to use the term freedom of speech, but the whole point of social media is so I can get on there and share my opinion with my friends. The problem is someone takes my opinion, and I think someone actually commented this in the thing, is people treating opinions as though they're facts. I go on and I post my opinions for my friends to see. Someone grabs it and says, oh my gosh, the world's on fire, shares it as though it is straight out of the New York Times. And suddenly you've created a piece of misinformation when all you wanted to do was share your opinion on a subject, Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing I see with misinformation. I think there are those that are intentionally like feeding people, but people's opinions just being way too highly shared seems to be a huge thing.
Yeah, and I mean, there's issues with the platform for this too. One of the things that Teresa Potratz, who we've had on the podcast before, mentioned is people not understanding how social media works, and I think that plays into misinformation a lot, right?
Sure.
Not everybody knows how to check the source of something that they're seeing. And the platform itself, if you hit, I don't know if y'all have seen yet, but there was like a new icon on the bottom when you log in mobile, and it's like a news icon, and it lets you scroll through news articles, and it just shows the headlines, and then it has the share button right there, like the share button, as if that's the go-to objective they want you to do is share it without even reading the article. You only are looking at the headline. Like, what do you expect?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of it's very interesting. It just goes to show human behavior and probably what scientists already knew. We are all lazy. We don't like reading, and if you have to read a bunch of stuff to be able to participate in a conversation, less people are going to do it. And so the bar to participate in conversation has been lowered. It's so if you take and like you say, Lacey, headlines, we write headlines, blog writers write headlines to be clickbait. And so we've seen this before where you read a headline and then you actually read the article and it's like it's related, but the headline is, maybe it's not completely misleading. Maybe it's not a complete lie, but it's in the gray area where it's like this headline was written to make somebody, induce rage.
Yeah.
It was not written with the truth and kernel of truth of the actual article in mind. Because media conglomerates or whatever, you basically get more subscriptions based on how many eyeballs you have, or the more eyeballs,
more
the more numbers,
based
the more
on
ad
your
money.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So it's kind of like we've created this system that it's like, well, if the media companies quit making, if they make truthful but boring headlines, they're gonna go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to have more extremes. So
I would love to see some sort of better education with this around communications professionals, because I know that when I was taking journalism classes, we were taught to write headlines around the facts, right? I was the TA for these journalism classes where I had to make sure that the headlines were within the fact and that we were using all the names properly. You failed if you misspelled a proper noun, I have trauma over that. But nobody's doing that in social media communications. There's no accountability for that. I wish we could have some better education around the balance between drawing attention and being factual.
Yeah. And media literacy for, kids starting when they're little kids. If we had more media literacy programs, starting from when you're little, coming all the way up, that would be huge. I think about like my dad or my grandpa. My grandpa read like 3 newspapers a day, cover to cover. So he would read from 3 different, the argument on social media about misinformation is everyone's like, oh, everything is misinformation and all the news is wrong and like all this stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, they all have their own biases. They all are published, have an editor, or have owners. There's all these, upper echelon people. But if you read 3 different newspapers and 3 different articles, and there's a certain standard of a certain editorial standard, right? The onus is on the reader to critically think and take the common themes and facts from the same 3, news articles and think, okay, well, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Maybe that's a little bit a bit exaggerated, but there's this. It's like it's up to us to do the work of thinking, but people don't want that. They want to just be fed. What should I think about this? Why should I be mad now?
Why should I be mad now? Is that why people log on to social media half the time? What should I be mad about today? Tell me.
Adrian, that's actually really interesting because I totally think it might even be a little bit worse than that, because rather than people not being willing to go and do the critical thinking, I think people actually seek out articles that will line up with the way that they feel or the way that they understand a situation. And so they don't even bother to read the 3 articles to see, because they're like, oh, I found this one. It tells me exactly what I want to hear. It must be the truth because I feel it. And I'm going to hit that share button 6 million times. So,
Seth, both Paul Kuth, Laura Beers, and Tom Hag, who commented, all talked about confirmation bias as one of the biggest problems with social media too, right? So we know that the way that the algorithms work is that when you put your attention on something, when you engage with something, then the algorithm says, okay, I'm going to send you more information like that, which creates more and more of this divide between people, right? In the social dilemma that we researched so much last year, we saw that you basically, if you do that enough, you can almost live in 2 different realities, right? You don't understand why these people believe what they believe because their feed and the information that they're getting is totally different than yours because of what you've engaged with. So do you think that confirmation bias issue, Seth, is also one of the biggest problems on social media?
Oh, definitely. I mean, since algorithms came out to tell you what you should and should not see, we have been training our algorithms. Like, I literally will intentionally go in and be like, I'm not sure why this is popping up, but you can go into the background of Facebook and say, why am I seeing this? I don't want to see this, and get rid of it. We've been training our algorithms forever, so I think that's definitely a huge part of it.
That's so smart, Seth. I think people don't really realize, technologically speaking, it's not like, Facebook or Google will go to Congress and testify in Congress about whatever it is, laws and bills that are trying to push through about digital platforms. and then it's in the news and people are like, oh, Facebook is all bad and everything. It's not like yesterday Facebook was like, we're going to like ruin your life and make the whole election confusing. And we're going to like, we're going to create all these conspiracy theories. Like, it wasn't like Facebook set out to make 2020 a living hell for everybody. It's been... Think about all the data since Facebook was invented in 2004 and like all the like parties you attended and pictures you shared with your friends and conversations with your ex-boyfriend from high school on Messenger that are there. Like, even if you delete it, it is still on Facebook because Facebook owns everything you put on it.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the things that Teresa talked about, and I'm always so grateful for her opinion and how she'll share it in Spry Space with us too, is that the algorithms themselves are written by a pretty homogenous group, right? Mm-hmm. And so primarily males, primarily in their 20s, primarily white, right? And so we've got a homogenous group of people who are coming up with what's going to go in the algorithm. And how does that affect the way that it actually interacts with us, right? If it was a bit of a more diverse group who was responsible for writing those algorithms, perhaps they would be written in a different way that maybe benefited more groups of people. Am I on the right track here, Adrienne?
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say too, thinking about human nature and, when people go out to build an app or build a program, right? You're all excited. You're like, oh, I'm going to invent something cool. I'm going to create all these buttons. So a new user will log in and they're going to like do these things and upload their videos and photos. And it's going to be so much fun. And, inventors, but the inventors don't get to force all of their users to use it in a certain way. Mm. So, right? So it's like, it's kind of like, well, Snapchat is a great example. It was created by a young man who was like, oh, this will be great. You can share photos and then they'll disappear. I don't know if his intention was to do this was to like share, so young men can share dick pics with girls. I have no idea. But maybe he was like, honestly, like, I could see a scenario where it's like, this would be the coolest idea ever, right? And you're like, I would use it for good, or I would use it for all these positive things, maybe. That's a lot of the times when things start.
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. A lot of the times. Yeah, sorry. People create things and think, oh, this is my use case. This is the perfect use case, my perfect user. But once you give it out to the people, you can't control what they do with it. So Facebook can't control when, neo-Nazis start to organize in groups on Facebook and use different words because, that they've figured out they can't control that because, maybe they did expect that, but, at the very beginning, Mark Zuckerberg just made it just as for a rating system in college for people's faces. But anyway, it's one of those things where if you have a bunch of people who get excited about building things and you have these ideas, you don't really think about all of the bad ways people could use it, or at least you don't think that initially, right? And now what you have to do is be like, okay, this is why we invented this, but what are all the bad things people could do with this? And then you have to expect that to happen.
Actually, that's really good. Because, Lacey, you were talking about the algorithms, and I was thinking, when you write the algorithms, it's not like I can write an algorithm, because I write algorithms. I just wanted to, for the people that are like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. No, I do.
You're like, wait, I do.
Write these
it's
things.
me.
Yeah.
I'm one of them.
I can't write an algorithm that says, I'm going to put content that a straight white male is going to like in front of people.
Right.
Honestly, when you write an algorithm, you're writing a thing that says, give the user what they want. Mm-hmm. So when you come into Facebook, your algorithm is blank. It knows nothing about you. So it starts just throwing things at you randomly. Like, do you like this? Do you like this? I'm sure when you first opened up TikTok, if you can remember, you got a wide variety of all sorts of crazy things that you would never be interested in a million years. And it's just the algorithms trying to figure out what does this person like? And as you start liking things, it starts to figure you out, and it starts to, cater to you. So honestly, the issues that we're facing today are on us, the users, all of us, because we are the ones that decide what the algorithms are feeding us by how we interact with things, how we like things, how we share things, how we dislike things. So here's something interesting. A dislike on something is still an interaction with that thing. And the algorithm still looks at it and says, they interacted with it, we should give them more of this, So it's on us, the users, the issues that we're facing with the algorithms today.
What's interesting is, like, as soon as you said that, Seth, all the algorithm is what does this person like? And I'm like, well, that's not necessarily good for people. But then, because as a parent, right, to my children, I wouldn't be like, whatever you like all the time, and more of it, more and more and more of whatever you like.
More.
But also, I mean, I guess the social media platforms aren't our parents, right? Like, it's not really their responsibility. I don't know. That's an interesting, as soon as you put it that way, more and more of what they like. Because if we were going to change it to be more and more of what's good for them, then who gets to decide what's good for us, you know? So,
plus we go onto social media to get what we like. I mean, if we logged onto social media and it gave us things that weren't interesting to us, the platform would just go under.
Does that mean we like to be mad?
We
because
do.
we log on,
You're so
and say,
right,
what
Seth.
should we be mad at today?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to a silly one for a second. So Sarah Carroll commented on this post and said, basically, the degradation of grammar. That's what's wrong with social media. She's like, I can't stand it when people are just using the letters like R and U instead of RU. She's like, I skim over it. I can't believe it. I can't stand it. Has social media made either of your grammar worse over time?
Honestly, it depends on the situation. So if I'm doing like a post or something that is not important, sure, I'll throw in an R or a U. If I'm writing my boss an email, you better believe that I'm going to double check that thing and make sure that it's, perfect. It honestly depends on the situation. I do think that post is funny, though, because
Her response,
yeah. Because if you take any English class in college, one of the first things they teach you is that the English language is alive and it's constantly evolving and it's constantly changing. And we may get to a place where when you look up the letter U in the dictionary, it says Y-O-U, definition, Y-O-U. Just because the English language is constantly morphing and changing to the people that are using it. We're not stuck in the past. So that one definitely made me laugh.
Yeah. Well, I think though she brings up a really good point. I agree with you, Seth. I used to be a huge stickler about grammar, and now I'm not. I have other things that I want to worry about in my life. But what she said, when I see it, I scroll right by. Okay, well then that piece of content was not made for you. Mm-hmm. It depends on your audience. So if you are, an admissions board at a college, you're not going to be using all kinds of slang. You're not going to be, you're going to make sure that all your grammar and sentences make sense. You're going to do that. Probably, lawyers, but the lawyers don't really hang out on social media, I've noticed, and it's probably for a reason. Like doctors, with COVID and with anything official, governmental, any institutions that want to have this level of credibility and standards. Obviously, yes, like they need to have grammar. I would understand if I saw something, if Harvard was trying to market to me, come and take an online Harvard class. Like, see you there, see you. I would be like, what? That's irritating. But at the same time, between interpersonal, I don't know. Yeah, my grammar has just gone downhill. But I don't think it's like a bad thing.
Well, no, think about like Twitter, where you only get a certain amount of characters. So it makes sense to sub out a few words for the letter if you can squeeze a few more things in. Punctuation, those are characters. So it makes sense to leave them out if you can squeeze in a few more things and get your thought across. So there are some places where doing some substitution with your grammar is completely, to me, acceptable.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gotten better at grammar since focusing on social media, because it doesn't mean that it's the same way that you would have done it in like writing an essay in college or in high school. But I like things to be clean, because I don't want there to be any distractions around what I'm trying to communicate. So I don't really care if you're using some sort of substitute like R and U. I wouldn't do it personally, but I don't care about that. But I want your periods to be in the right places. I want you to be using bullet points. I want you to... This is why our highest trafficked piece of content is the emoji grammar blog that we wrote a while ago. Because I was like so tired of seeing people use emojis improperly that I was like, we are coming up with whatever the proper grammar is, and that's what people are... I mean, people are searching it. That's been our highest piece of content trafficked like for the last year.
Yeah. I also think I think she also brings up a good point as well, not just with grammar, but with language. I think that, communicating is so important for everyone, and precise communication is very important. And punctuation can help you with precise communication, and that is extremely important. And depending on your audience, you're going to punctuate and write differently. I think also, though, with like inclusivity, talking about we've been talking a lot about inclusivity with writing and what kind of content we create. There's also words that when we're lazy, we revert to these words that might have a history of, putting a specific group down.
This is an interesting point, Adrian.
So, like the word, like the word "dumb," for instance, it historically has been used to describe people who
cannot speak.
might have hearing loss, or can't speak. So I didn't really think about that, and I read an article about inclusive language, and I saw that, and I had just literally had a story. I think I wrote something. I posted something on my personal page about, and I used that word, and then I thought, oh my gosh, that word, I use that quite often to describe, when you're frustrated with the world around you. We have these words that we kind of we just kind of jump on, and we use them when we're lazy and tired, and we don't want to put the time and effort in to really use our words really well. But I think if I can kind of, what's the right word for it? Kind of pivot from what she's saying with grammar, I think also using our words really well is very important, so that we, speak inclusively and, potentially don't hurt somebody else. So anyway, that's kind of one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately.
I've on that same vein, I've been hearing so many people talk about how sensitive everybody is now, and how everything can't be, you can't say anything anymore. And I gotta be honest, I don't mind it. I'm like, this is called accountability. Like figure it out, okay? Now we have all this access to information. Before we might have been making these choices about what language we were using and what words we were calling people and what little phrases we were taught as kids that we're using now, that now all of a sudden we're learning come from like these oppressive things that were done to groups of people, right? And so what? So what that you have to just think a little bit more about what you say? Oh, I'm so sorry that you have to think just a little bit more about the words you say, because people are going to hold you accountable now.
Yeah, okay. It's true. and also it's kind of like When you're that tired and run down and emotionally vulnerable that you get on the internet and type out a screed using slurs and bah, all this, we've all seen them, right?
We've probably done them a little bit,
We've probably even done it, maybe. But to be honest, when you're in that state, you shouldn't be on the internet. You should just step away and be like, I am not going to use my words well. I'm going to not be clear. I might say something that I will regret. I am just going to pause and take a nap, and then pop up in a dictionary and call who's the person that mentioned the grammar?
Sarah.
Call Sarah. How should I tell if this person grammatically correctly?
I've got one more piece before we move on to the last couple things, but this happened to me just this last couple weeks. I put out our post at the beginning of Women's History Month, and I actually ended up deleting like a paragraph that I had in there. I had a friend who messaged me, and she's like, "Hey, do you want any feedback on your Women's History post?" And I'm like, sure. She's like, you can say no, you're fine, you can say no. But I'm like, sure. And one of the things that I had done is I had referenced the fact that it was 101 years ago that the amendment was passed making sure that women did not lose the right to vote, right? However, what I didn't understand before some more research is that actually really only impacted white women. Women of color were not granted that same right at that time. And so, she gave me that little bit of information. I, did the research I needed to confirm that I was not speaking as clearly and inclusively as possible, and chose to remove that paragraph. So we got to welcome the accountability. It's learning. It
is. So, but to wrap up, though, sometimes I just fill up all of my paragraphs with emojis. So, and multiple explanation points. I love that. Everyone will probably hate me to say that. I love the exclamation points.
Okay, so there's a couple more things. I think I'm going to choose maybe one more for us to go over here. We won't be able to cover everything, but the one that I think is probably the most important is social media addiction. Okay, so when we talk about what's wrong with social media, I don't think we can have that conversation without addiction. Seth, are you addicted to social media?
Oh, yeah.
Are you?
Definitely, yeah. I would totally admit to that.
How bad is it?
Not terrible. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this thing that I took a break from social media, and generally when I do that, it's because I realize that I'm spending just way too much time on it and getting way too attached. Because we get vested in it, If your favorite TikToker didn't post today, you need to know why.
I was gonna ask, is it TikTok's fault?
Oh, it's totally TikTok. Honestly, I've been getting further and further away from Facebook and even Instagram. Just, I don't know. I think I'm getting younger.
Oh, are you? Wow, amazing.
I don't know. TikTok just seems to be far more entertaining to me than Facebook or Insta right now. So.
I like that, Seth. You're getting younger. I can tell.
It's so easy to get addicted to social media. It's so easy. If we don't put parameters in place and we don't actually try to be in control, we just are. It's on our hip. It's on our hand. It's with us so much. Adrian, how are you managing that right now? I mean, I know we all have problems, and so we're all just kind of like a different level of addicted at this point.
Yeah.
How are you feeling in regards to social media addiction right now in your life?
I feel like medium addicted. Mm-hmm. I feel maybe an upward trend. So it's kind of like, drugs or alcohol. When you were in college, when I was in college anyway, and I knew I had finals coming, I had all these things I had to do. I had all these responsibilities, and maybe I wasn't getting enough sleep. Maybe I was not getting enough to eat. And you have, you're emotionally raw and run down, and you fill it with something easy. You know, it's hard to just sit with yourself and say, I need to do the work. I need to do my work. I need to do these things. Because you just don't want to. And it's easier to do something that's easy, like go out and have beers with your friends. Or it's easy to pick up your phone and scroll on Facebook. Like these addictions or vices or whatever. I mean, social media is a total kind of, a substance. And so I feel like whenever, I have a lot on my plate, or I'm just feeling, for whatever reason, emotionally ragged, that is when I tend to just dive into social media, and that is just, I think it's true for everybody. I'm also, with the pandemic and everything, I'm a total extrovert. I remember back in the day, before smartphones, I had the flip phones, I remember being a young lady, and I would, text my friends, and then I would literally like lay in bed and just like watch my phone, be like, somebody write me back, please. So I want somebody to write me back, but that like connection, and so it's kind of people writing to you, and the notifications remind you that you exist, and that people know that you exist, and are saying, yeah, we see you, and you're like, I'm seen. So I think that also it's when you're emotionally ragged and you want to be seen is when for me, when I really start to just binge.
I would wear a t-shirt that said emotionally ragged. I feel like it actually makes me think, one of the last kind of pieces that people had talked about is the idea of like keyboard warriors, or that the problem on social media is people, or our good friend Brett, who we interviewed a couple weeks ago, said there's no real conversation happening, right? People don't come with an open mind. I always like to kind of dream about future tech, and so I would love if like social media could scan me before I get on, and it's like, you are feeling emotionally ragged. Today we will only show you cat videos,
and you can't message anybody.
yes. You are feeling inspired. You may enter this group now. I would
this.
I would like this world.
Okay.
What you're allowed to do on social media is dependent on your emotions that day.
I have an idea. Okay. I feel like we should just put this out there on the internet, and if anybody hears this and takes this idea from us, you can go for it, because just take it. But it could be like an app or something, and it could be called Mood Ring. And
I love it.
You log on, and somehow, I don't know how it would sense your mood,
your respiratory rate, your heart rate, your eye dilation. I've thought of it.
Yeah, and it gives you like a little color, and then it could just, like a mood ring, but you could call it mood ring.
Stop
and
it,
then
Adrian.
just have it be a little
that.
like extension on Facebook or something. Like add it as an extension. I don't know if Facebook even has extensions. Facebook, maybe you should make extensions. We're coming up with all these ideas.
Seth, can you develop this for us? Because you write algorithms, so.
I probably could, actually. I was totally just thinking, I'm like, we could totally write this thing in Java, and we could have it access the laser reader for the fingers, and we could totally make this happen.
Okay, see?
I'm just not sure how to link it to your social media to where it like locks you out if you don't meet the right requirements.
It could read your mood, but maybe it couldn't adjust your...
It could give you advice, like it pops up and says, you probably should not go on Facebook today. But if that was the case, I would just write an app that every time you opened it, it would say, you probably should not go on social media today.
Right.
So, I don't know.
And part of the mood ring, it would measure you and your biometric data, but then would also know if like your ex-girlfriend or boyfriend just came back from Paris and got proposed to and had all these like pictures that are gonna set you off into a tailspin, those kind of pictures. I mean, we've all seen those kind of pictures, or like people alluded to that. Yeah, and that's like, you should not be. Let's not go on social media today. And you're like, thank you, mood ring. I'm gonna go bake a pie. I don't know.
Here are 5 other options you could do. You could do right now. I like this.
love this idea.
Well, I think we got through, honestly, a lot of the things that are wrong with social media. Certainly, there's many, many more. And I think it's just important for us to take a break every once in a while from love and light, positive vibes only, to talk about and remind ourselves what is wrong. We can spend all our time focusing on what's good and what people are doing with the platforms that are good. But if we don't keep talking about what's wrong with the platform, then we're not going to necessarily make any real progress forward. It's all going to stay superficial. So I hope we can continue talking about what's wrong with social media and wrong until we can make it a little bit more right, you know?
Yep.
Well, I mean, it's worked today. We were talking about what's wrong with it, and we already came up with a potential idea to fix it partially.
We wouldn't have done that if we weren't talking about what's wrong. So
exactly.
All right. Well, I always like to close with a question about how your relationship is doing with social media right now. So, Seth, you talked about it a little bit already, but give me a brief overview. How's your relationship with social media? How you doing?
I've actually been taking pretty much of a break from all social media. I'll jump on TikTok for a couple of minutes here or there, but just stepping away from it for now and, recentering, realizing there's a world outside the window.
What are you doing with your time otherwise? Like,
I'm running a lot, studying different things, looking up stuff for work, just things I should be doing.
Maybe I'll take a break sometime soon. Spring break is coming up. Maybe we can align with a nice social media break for everybody around spring break.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
We could make a campaign about that.
I was just thinking that.
Spring break, we're all taking a break from social media.
Hashtag spring break from social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it.
I love it.
We'll work on it. Idea 2. All right, Adrienne, Seth, thank you so much for your time this evening. For those of you who are listening, we are grateful for your time as well. We hope to see you on any of our social channels or in our Spry Space Facebook group. But whatever you're doing, we hope that you keep learning. We will talk to you soon. Bye.